All right, welcome back. In our last session, we took a look at the macro environment of a project. Things like onshore versus offshore and greenfield versus brownfield. We really set the stage. Today, we're going to zoom right in. We'll be discussing the fundamental vocabulary of our trade, the piping components themselves.
To someone new to the field, a piping model can look like a continuous, confusing web of tubes, but to a piping engineer, it's something entirely different. It's a carefully considered assembly of distinct mechanical devices. Every single one has been selected for a specific functional purpose. We're not just connecting dots from point A to point B. We are building a pressure boundary, and we do that using 4 primary categories of components: pipe, fittings, flanges, and valves.
So, in this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers, go past the simple catalog definitions, and really understand what these components actually do in a live process plant. We'll cover what they are, what their real purpose is, the huge impact they have on safety, and finally, we'll touch on something crucial, the difference between how they look on a drawing and what they are in physical reality. Okay, let's get started. Before we can even begin to analyze a complex system, we have to be speaking the same language. We have to master the vocabulary. So first, let's categorize the basic building blocks you'll find in any process piping system. It really breaks down into 4 simple groups. First, you've got the pipe. That's your primary conduit, the cylinder that's containing all that pressure. Second, you have fittings. Think of your elbows, T's, and reducers. Their whole job is to manipulate the geometry of the flow. Third are the flanges. These are basically the connectors, allowing us to bolt pipe to equipment or to other sections of pipe. And fourth, you have your valves. These are the active control mechanisms that give an operator the power to manage the process.
Now, this might all sound pretty basic, but the real engineering, the real craft, lies in the application of these components. You don't just pick them from a menu. You select them based on what the fluid is actually doing inside that pipe, and just as importantly, how the plant is going to be maintained by real people in the field.
Okay, so we have our basic categories down. Now let's go a level deeper. We're going to look beyond those simple definitions and really examine the true functional purpose of each of these components when they're part of a live operating process system.
So here's the first critical shift in thinking you need to make. A pipe is not just a tube or a straw. Functionally, it's a pressure vessel. Its number one job is to withstand the internal bursting force of the fluid running through it. So when you route a pipe, you have to remember that you are routing a loaded structural member.
And what about fittings? Well, they aren't just for changing direction. They are engineered points of turbulence. An elbow, sure, it changes the flow path, but it also creates a pressure drop, and it becomes a focal point for erosion. So if you've got some abrasive sand in your crude oil, guess where the pipe wall is going to wear thin first? Right at the elbow. A reducer changes fluid velocity, and if you compress a gas too quickly, you're going to introduce noise and vibration into your system.
Flanges are interesting because they exist for one main reason: maintenance. Honestly, if we could, we would weld every single joint in the entire plant, because a good weld almost never leaks. But you can't weld a pipe directly to a pump, right? Because eventually that pump will need to be pulled out for repair. So flanges give us that necessary breakpoint in the system, allowing us to safely take the plant apart when we need to.
And finally, valves. They serve 3 very distinct logic functions. First, you have isolation. This is done with gate and ball valves, which are designed to be either fully open or fully closed to stop the flow. Second is throttling. This is where you use something like a globe valve to precisely regulate the flow rate, kind of like a faucet. And third is prevention. This uses automatic check valves that stop fluid from flowing backward, which is absolutely critical for protecting expensive equipment.
So, we understand what the components are, and we understand what they do. Now we get to the most critical part: how a designer's choices with these simple components directly determine whether a plant is safe and operable, or if it's a disaster just waiting to happen.
And why does this matter so much? It's simple. The wrong selection or the wrong placement of any of these components will eventually lead to failure. Let's look at a few specific examples from real-world projects. Let's start with the flange. Remember, it's a gasketed joint held together by bolts. By its very definition, it is the weakest link in your pressure boundary. So what happens if you place a flange directly above a hot pump or over a main walkway? If that gasket fails, you're spraying hazardous fluid directly onto an ignition source, or worse, onto an operator. A good designer knows to minimize flanges and always place them where a potential leak can be managed safely.
Or let's consider a valve. Say you use a gate valve, which remember is designed for simple on-off isolation, and you try to use it to throttle or regulate the flow. What happens?
That high-velocity fluid starts to erode the bottom of the gate. Over time, the valve won't be able to seal properly, so when an operator goes to shut it in an emergency, it's going to leak. That's a serious safety incident caused directly by poor component selection.
This is a brilliant illustration of a very subtle but incredibly critical choice. Let's look at a pump suction line. If you install the wrong type of reducer, a concentric reducer on a horizontal pipe, you can accidentally create a vapor trap right at the top. This little air pocket eventually gets sucked into the pump, causing destructive cavitation that can literally shatter the impeller. Every single component you place has a hydraulic and a mechanical consequence.
And this brings us to our final section, and it covers what is arguably the most common mistake made by junior designers, confusing the symbol on a drawing with the physical reality out in the plant.
Think about it. On a P&ID, a valve is just two little triangles on a line. It takes up no space at all. But in reality, a 24-inch motor-operated gate valve can weigh 5 tons and stand 3 meters tall. It is a massive piece of equipment that's going to need its own concrete foundation just to support it.
It's the same with the flange. On a schematic, it's just a single perpendicular line. In the real world, that flange needs space. It needs space for a technician to stand there, space to operate a heavy torque wrench, and enough clearance to actually pull the bolts out. If you place a flange flush against a wall or right next to a steel beam, congratulations, you've just designed a non-maintainable plant. It's really that simple.
So here's the crucial point, the thing you have to take away from this. You must stop seeing symbols and start seeing physical objects. When you place a valve in your 3D model, you have to ask yourself, where does the operator stand? Can they reach the hand wheel? Is there room to pull the bolts out of that flange? You're not designing a video game level. You are designing a workplace for other professionals.
All right, let's take a moment and summarize the key functional principles that we've covered today for these fundamental piping components.
So let's recap these key takeaways. Always think of pipes as pressure vessels and fittings as engineered points of turbulence. Treat flanges as necessary but deliberate weak points for maintenance, which means you should use them as sparingly as possible. Always select a valve for its specific role: isolation, throttling, or prevention. And maybe most importantly, always design for the physical reality, for the size, the weight, and the access needed by the people who will build and maintain the plant for years to come.
So now we have a good grasp of the shapes and functions of our components. But here's the next logical question. What are they made of? After all, a carbon steel pipe carrying sulfuric acid would dissolve in days, while a plastic pipe in a high-temperature steam line would melt instantly. In our next explainer, we're going to dive into the world of piping materials and explore how their selection is driven by the very specific conditions of the process fluid itself.